The Galactic Academy of Studies was the oldest school in the known universe. It had existed for 12,000 cycles. Students from hundreds of different planets came there to learn about other species. They studied biology, culture, and history. But in all those thousands of years, the Academy had never allowed a class to visit one particular planet. Earth. Professor stood before her xenobiology class on the morning of the trip. She was a tall, thin creature from a planet called. Her body was made of swirling gases held together by a thin membrane. When she was nervous, her gases flickered and changed color. Right now, they were flickering a lot. "I must tell you the rules one more time," she said. Her voice came through the universal translator that all students wore. "Earth is classified as a Category 7. This is the highest danger rating we give to any planet. You will stay inside the observation dome at all times. You will not touch anything from Earth. You will not eat anything from Earth. You will not talk to any humans unless I say it is okay. Do you all understand?" 12 students nodded, clicked, or vibrated to show they understood. They were all different species. Some had tentacles, some had wings, some were made of crystal, some were made of liquid, but they all had one thing in common. They were all scared and excited at the same time. Was one of these students. She was which meant her body was made of living crystal. Her species was very delicate. Even a warm breeze could crack their skin. Even a loud sound could shatter their bones. Almost never left their home planet because the universe was too dangerous for them, but was brave. She wanted to see Earth with her own eyes. "Professor," asked another student named, was a round, soft creature from a water moon. He looked like a big blue balloon with flippers. "Why do they call Earth a killing world? What is so dangerous about it?" Professor's gases turned dark gray. This meant she was very serious. "Because everything on that planet wants to kill everything else. The weather wants to kill you. The animals want to kill you. The plants want to kill you. Even the smallest living things, too small to see, want to kill you. And the dominant species, the humans, they are the most dangerous of all. They have survived on that planet for hundreds of thousands of years. Think about what that means. They are tougher than everything else on a planet where everything is trying to kill them." The students were quiet after that. The transport ship left the academy and traveled through space toward Earth. It took several hours. During this time, the students looked at information about Earth on their screens. They read about earthquakes, which were when the ground itself would shake and crack open. They read about hurricanes, which were storms so powerful they could destroy entire cities. They read about volcanoes, which were mountains that exploded with liquid fire. They read about the ocean, which covered most of the planet and was filled with creatures that had hundreds of teeth. "This cannot be real," whispered a small student whose species could turn invisible when scared. Was almost completely invisible now. "No planet can be this dangerous." "It is real," Professor said, "and we have not even discussed the humans yet." The ship entered Earth's atmosphere. The students pressed their faces against the viewing windows. They saw blue oceans that stretched to the horizon. They saw green forests that covered entire continents. They saw white clouds floating peacefully in the sky. "It looks beautiful," said softly. Her crystal body reflected the blue light of Earth's oceans. "So does a quantum trap," the professor replied, "until you step into it." They landed in a place called the Korean Peninsula. It was on the eastern side of a large continent. The Academy had set up a special observation dome there. The dome was made of concentrated energy that could stop almost anything. It could survive plasma weapons. It could survive meteor strikes. The students would be safe inside it. But when they stepped out of the ship and into the dome, they saw something that shocked them. A human was standing outside the dome, just standing there, in the open air, with no protection at all. He was young, with black hair and tan skin. He wore simple fabric clothes. He was smiling. A small card on his chest said his name was Park, and he was a cultural exchange liaison. "Welcome to Earth," he said. His voice came through the translator clearly. He sounded friendly and relaxed, like he was welcoming them to a pleasant garden party and not to the most dangerous planet in the known galaxy. "I hope you are ready to have your minds blown." Stared at him. This creature was standing in direct sunlight. Earth's sun was a violent star that threw out deadly radiation every second. How was he not dead? How was he not even wearing protective gear? Is he supposed to be out there?" asked quietly. "Humans live out there," Professor said. Her voice was tense. "They live in that environment every day. They breathe that air. They drink that water. They walk under that sun. And they think it is normal." Waved at them through the dome barrier. His smile was wide and genuine. "Don't be shy," he called out. "I know we have a scary reputation, but I promise I don't bite. Well, I don't bite aliens anyway. I might bite a sandwich later. Speaking of which, is anyone hungry? I brought snacks." The students looked at each other in horror. The humans ate with their mouths, the same mouths they used to speak, the same mouths that had teeth inside them. This was going to be a long field trip. Walked along the outside of the observation dome with his hands in his pockets. He looked completely relaxed. The alien students followed along on the inside of the dome, keeping the energy barrier between themselves and this strange creature. "So," said cheerfully, "do you have any questions before we start the tour? I am here to help you learn about Earth. Ask me anything." Raised one of her crystal arms. "How do you survive the radiation?" Stopped walking, he looked confused. "What radiation?" "From your star," explained. "Sol emits ultraviolet radiation at extremely dangerous levels. Our scientists say it should kill most organic life within hours of direct exposure. You are standing in direct sunlight right now." Looked up at the sun, then he looked back then he laughed. The sound made 3 students jump backward. Human laughter was loud and sudden. It sounded almost like a bark. "Oh, you mean sunlight," said, still chuckling. "Yeah, we just go outside, it is fine. Sometimes we put on a cream called sunscreen if we are going to be outside for a long time. My sister burns easily. She has very fair skin, but I just get a tan. I actually like being in the sun. It feels nice and warm." Professor made a choking sound. "You expose yourself to your star willingly, for pleasure." "Sure, lots of people do. There are entire beaches where humans lie in the sun for hours. We call it sunbathing. It is very relaxing." The students could not process this information. Lying under a deadly radiation source for relaxation. What kind of species did that? Raised one of his flippers. "What about the monoxide? Our reports say it falls from your sky in large amounts, enough to flood entire areas, enough to kill anyone caught in it." Monoxide, thought for a moment. "Oh, you mean rain? That is just water falling from clouds. We need it to grow our food. Without rain, all our plants would die." He smiled at a memory. "My little brother loves the rain. He is only 7 years old. Whenever it rains, he runs outside and jumps in the puddles. He gets completely wet and my mother has to dry him off with towels. But he thinks it is the most fun thing in the world." You let children go outside during water storms. Professor's gases had turned completely white, which meant she was in shock. "It is not a storm, it is just rain. It is harmless." "Harmless," repeated weakly. His species lived in water, but even he knew that water falling from the sky at high speed could be dangerous. Earth rain fell hard enough to make noise when it hit the ground. Seemed to realize he was scaring his guests. He held up his hands in a calming gesture. "Look, I understand Earth seems dangerous to you. And okay, yes, we have some extreme weather. We have earthquakes, hurricanes, tornadoes, tsunamis, blizzards, and heat waves. We have volcanoes that can bury cities in ash. We have floods that can wash away towns. But you get used to it. Humans have lived here for 300,000 years. We know how to survive." "What about your water?" asked. The small student was still mostly invisible from fear. "We read that most of your planet is covered in water that will kill you if you breathe it." "The ocean. Yeah, we cannot breathe underwater. That is true, but we can swim in it. We build boats to travel across it. Some humans even dive deep under the water just to see what is down there. My cousin is a scuba diver. He goes down 50 meters sometimes. He says it is beautiful down there. He voluntarily submerges himself in deadly liquid, said slowly, because it is beautiful. Exactly. He sends me pictures sometimes. There are amazing fish and coral reefs and all kinds of life down there. Professor needed to sit down. She found a bench inside the dome and lowered herself onto it. Her gases were swirling in confused patterns. Continued the tour. He showed them plants that had sharp thorns. He explained that some plants on Earth made poison to protect themselves. He showed them insects, tiny creatures that could bite or sting. He explained that some of these insects carried diseases that had killed millions of humans throughout history. But we have medicine now, he said casually. We figured out how to cure most of those diseases, and the ones we cannot cure, we have vaccines to prevent them. You fought a war against invisible enemies, said, and you won. More or less. We are still working on some of them, but we have beaten a lot of the really bad ones. Then brought out the food. He opened a container and showed them several items. This is kimchi. It is vegetables that we let sit until they ferment. This process uses bacteria to change the flavor. My grandmother makes the best kimchi. She has been making it for 60 years. This is bulgogi. It is meat from an animal called a cow. We cook it over fire until it is tender. And it is rice cakes in a spicy sauce. Fermented, whispered. You eat food that has been decomposed by bacteria. And animal flesh, added, from a dead creature. Spicy, squeaked, meaning it contains chemicals that cause pain. Capsaicin, confirmed happily. It makes your mouth feel like it is on fire. It is delicious. Koreans put it in almost everything. The more it hurts, the more we like it. The students stared at him in absolute horror. This creature ate rotting vegetables, dead animal bodies, and chemicals that simulated burning. And he enjoyed it. He called it delicious. Your grandmother, Professor managed to say, she is still alive, at such an old age. She is 83, she is very healthy. She goes hiking every weekend. Hiking. Walking up mountains for fun, for exercise. She says it keeps her young. An 83-year-old human climbing mountains for entertainment. Professor decided she needed to lie down. This species was completely insane. And they had only been on Earth for 1 hour. The next day brought someone new to meet the students. She was a young woman with long black hair tied back in a ponytail. She had kind eyes but a serious expression. Her name was, and she was a historian who specialized in teaching aliens about human history. I understand you want to learn about our past, said. She set up a holographic display that floated in the air between her and the observation dome. I should warn you before we begin. Human history is not a happy story. It is full of violence and death. Are you sure you want to hear it? We are scientists, Professor said. She had recovered somewhat from yesterday's shocks. We must understand your species completely. That includes your history. Nodded, very well, let us begin. What followed was 3 hours that changed how the students saw humans forever. Started with ancient history. She showed them how early humans had fought each other with sticks and stones, then with metal weapons, then with bows and arrows, then with guns and cannons. Each new invention was more deadly than the last. Each war killed more people than the one before. Humans fought each other over land, explained. Over food, over water, over religious beliefs, over political ideas, sometimes over nothing more than pride and honor. She showed them the great empires of Earth, the Romans who conquered most of Europe, the Mongols who swept across Asia, the British who built an empire that spanned the globe, all of them built on conquest and blood. Every human civilization, said quietly, was built on the bones of the defeated. Then she showed them the modern wars. The students learned about World War I. Millions of soldiers had died in muddy trenches, fighting over a few miles of ground. They used poison gas that melted lungs. They used machine guns that could kill hundreds in minutes. They used artillery that could flatten entire towns. "How many died?" asked. His voice was barely a whisper. "About 20 million, said, soldiers and civilians combined." 20 million. The students tried to imagine that number. Some of their entire species did not have that many members. Then showed them World War II. This war was worse, much worse. The students learned about bombs that could destroy cities in seconds. They learned about camps where millions of people were killed simply because of their religion or ethnicity. They learned about battles where entire islands were covered in bodies. 70 to 80 million dead, said, the most destructive event in human history. "But surely," said desperately, "surely after that you stopped. Surely you learned that war was too terrible." Was quiet for a moment. Then she showed them the nuclear bombs. The students watched in horror as a single weapon erased the city of Hiroshima. One bomb, 100,000 dead in an instant. And then another bomb fell on Nagasaki 3 days later. After the war ended, said, humans did not stop making these weapons. We made more. We made thousands of them. We pointed them at each other across the planet. We called it the Cold War. For decades, humanity lived with the knowledge that we could destroy ourselves completely at any moment. "You achieved the ability to end your own species," Professor said slowly, "and your response was to make that ability stronger." "Yes, we called it deterrence. The idea was that no one would use the weapons because everyone would die. It worked in a way. We never had a full nuclear war, but we came close several times." The students could not speak. They were trying to understand a species that had built weapons capable of ending all life on their planet, and then built more of them just to be safe. But was not finished. She showed them smaller wars, Korea, Vietnam, the Middle East, Africa. Humans kept fighting and dying all over the planet. They invented new weapons, better bombs, smarter missiles, deadlier chemicals. And then she showed them something different. "This," said, "is a sport called boxing." The hologram showed two humans in a ring. They were hitting each other with their fists, hard. Blood flew from cut faces. The crowd around them was cheering. "They are fighting," observed. "Is this a war?" "No, this is entertainment. People pay money to watch this. The fighters train for years to become good at hitting each other." "For entertainment," repeated. "You watch violence for fun." "Yes, we also have wrestling, martial arts, and rugby." Showed them footage of rugby players slamming into each other at full speed. Bodies crashed together. Players got up with blood on their faces and kept playing. "My father was a boxer when he was young. He still has a crooked nose from a match he lost. He is very proud of that nose." "Proud," Professor said weakly, "of being injured. It shows he was brave enough to step into the ring." The students sat in silence for a long time after finished her presentation. Finally spoke, Why do humans do this to each other? You are the same species. You share the same planet. Why do you keep fighting and killing?" Considered the question carefully. "I do not have a good answer for you. Maybe it is because our planet was so dangerous that we had to become dangerous too. Maybe violence is built into us at a deep level. Maybe we are just broken in some way." She paused. "But I can tell you this. Every time we fall into darkness, some of us try to find the light again. Every time we commit terrible acts, some of us stand up and say no more. We keep trying to be better. We fail a lot. But we keep trying." Professor looked at her students. They were traumatized. Some were shaking, had become completely invisible. "This," the professor said quietly, "is why Earth is classified as a killing world. Not because of the environment, not because of the weather or the animals, because of what the environment created. It created humans, the most dangerous species in the known galaxy. And they still had 2 more days on this planet." On the third day, something happened that none of the students would ever forget. It started as a normal morning. Arrived at the observation dome with his usual cheerful smile. He was carrying a bag of what he called snacks. The students had learned not to ask what was in the bag. The answer was always something terrifying. Today it was dried squid, which was exactly what it sounded like. Dead sea creatures that had been dried out until they were chewy. "Good morning, everyone," called out. "How did you sleep? Are you ready for today's tour? I thought we could look at some Korean architecture. There are some beautiful old temples nearby. My friend is coming later to pick me up. He knows a lot about traditional buildings." The students were about to respond when the ground moved. It was not a big movement at first, just a slight vibration. But then it grew stronger. The floor of the observation dome shook. The walls trembled. The students could hear a deep rumbling sound coming from beneath them. "Earthquake," Professor shouted. "Everyone stay calm, the dome will protect us." She was right. The observation dome stabilizers activated immediately. The shaking stopped inside the dome. The students were completely safe. The energy barrier protected them from everything outside. But outside, the world was different. Through the dome walls, the students watched as the ground cracked and shifted. Buildings swayed back and forth. Trees shook violently. Loose objects fell from shelves and tables. The earthquake lasted for about 30 seconds, but it felt much longer. And through it all just stood there. He stumbled slightly when the shaking was at its worst. He reached out one hand to steady himself against a nearby wall, but he did not run. He did not scream. He did not even look particularly worried. When the shaking stopped, he pulled out his phone and looked at it. "Just a 5-pointer, he called out casually. "Nothing serious. Is everyone okay in there?" The students were not okay. His crystal body was still vibrating from the residual tremors. Had pulled himself into a tight ball, his flippers wrapped around his body. Had gone completely invisible and was making small, whimpering sounds. Even Professor's gases were swirling in chaotic patterns. "Your planet," the professor managed to say, "just tried to tear itself apart, and you are checking your phone. I want to make sure the trains are still running, is coming from Seoul. If the trains are delayed, he will be late." Tapped at his phone screen. "Looks like everything is fine. The subway is running normally." "Normally," repeated. "An earthquake is normal for you." "Well, not every day, but we get a few every year. Korea is not as bad as Japan. Japan gets earthquakes all the time. They are used to it. They build their buildings to handle the shaking." The students tried to imagine a civilization that designed all its buildings around the assumption that the ground would regularly try to destroy them. They could not imagine it. It was too insane. But the earthquake was not the real demonstration of the day. 20 minutes later, an alarm started ringing in the distance. It was loud and urgent. The students could see flashing lights coming from somewhere in the city. "What is that?" asked nervously. "Is it another earthquake?" Looked toward the sound. His expression became serious for the first time since the students had met him. "No, that is a fire alarm. Something is burning." Through the dome, they could see smoke rising from a building about 3 blocks away. Orange flames were visible in the windows of an old structure. The fire was spreading quickly. And then the students saw something that changed everything they thought they knew about humans. A large red vehicle came racing down the street. It stopped near the burning building. Humans in heavy gear jumped out. They wore thick coats and helmets and carried equipment the students did not recognize. And then these humans ran toward the fire. Not away from the fire, toward it. "What are they doing?" His voice was filled with disbelief. "The building is burning, there is active combustion, they are running into it." "Those are firefighters," said. His voice was quiet and respectful. "It is their job. They go into burning buildings to save people who are trapped inside." "Their job," Professor repeated. "Humans have a profession dedicated to running into fires." "Yes, Every city has them. Every town. Even small villages have volunteer firefighters who will drop whatever they are doing to help when there is a fire. The students watched in stunned silence as the firefighters rushed into the burning building. Flames roared around them. Smoke poured from every window. The heat must have been incredible, but they did not hesitate. They did not stop. They went in. Minutes passed. The students barely breathed. Then a firefighter emerged from the front door. She was carrying someone on her back, an old woman with gray hair and soot-covered clothes. The firefighter set the old woman down gently where other humans were waiting with medical equipment. Then she turned around and went back into the burning building. "She is going back in," whispered. "She just saved someone and she is going back into the fire." "There might be more people inside," explained. "She will not stop until she knows everyone is safe." The firefighter emerged again a few minutes later. This time she was carrying a small child. The child was crying but alive. In the child's arms was a small furry animal, a cat. "They saved the grandmother, the child, and a pet," said slowly. "They risked their lives for an elderly individual who is past reproductive age, a child who cannot contribute to society yet, and a small non-sapient creature." "Of course they did." His voice had a strange edge to it, something almost like anger. "What else would they do? Leave them to burn?" "On most planets," Professor said carefully. "Yes, resources are valuable. Risk must be calculated against benefit. Sending healthy adults into danger to rescue those who cannot contribute to society would be considered illogical." Stared at the professor. For a long moment he did not speak. When he finally did, his voice was very quiet. "That old woman is someone's grandmother. That child is someone's baby. That cat is someone's friend. They matter. They all matter, not because of what they can do, because of who they are, because they are alive and they deserve to keep living." He took a breath. "Those firefighters do not know those people. They have never met them. They might never see them again after today. But they will walk through fire to save them anyway. That is what humans do." The students watched as the firefighters finally came out of the building for the last time. The fire was under control now. Other humans with hoses were spraying water on the flames. The old woman was hugging the child, both of them wrapped in blankets. The cat was purring in the child's arms. One of the firefighters took off her helmet. She was sweating and covered in ash. She looked exhausted, but she was smiling. Felt something shift inside her crystal mind, something she had never felt before when looking at humans. It was not fear, it was respect. On the final day, Professor asked, and for a private conversation. The students were allowed to watch from inside the dome, but only the professor would speak with the humans directly. The professor floated near the edge of the barrier, her gases swirling in thoughtful patterns, and stood outside, patient and calm. "I must ask you something," the professor said. "It has been bothering me since we arrived. How is your species still alive?" And looked at each other. "What do you mean?" asked. "I mean exactly what I said. You have nuclear weapons that could destroy your entire planet. You have a history of violence that spans your entire existence. You fight wars over ideas and beliefs and sometimes over nothing at all. Every model we have built, every simulation we have run says that humanity should have gone extinct centuries ago. You should have destroyed yourselves, but you did not. You are still here. You are building spacecraft and reaching for the stars. How? How did you survive yourselves?" Was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Can tell you a story." "Please." Took a breath. "My grandfather was named. He was born in a small village in Korea. When he was 15 years old, a terrible war came to our country. His village was destroyed. His family was scattered. He did not know if his parents or his brothers and sisters were alive or dead. He had nothing but the clothes he was wearing." The students inside the dome listened carefully. Even became visible again, too interested in the story to stay hidden. "My grandfather walked for months," continued. He walked 400 kilometers through mountains and forests, through snow and rain. He had almost no food. He slept in ditches and abandoned buildings. Many people died on that journey. My grandfather almost died too, many times. This is impressive survival, Professor acknowledged, but I do not see how. I am not finished. His voice was gentle but firm. During that walk, my grandfather met another boy, a stranger. They did not know each other. They had no reason to trust each other. Resources were scarce. Logic would say they should compete for what little food and shelter they could find. Yes, that would be the logical approach. But that is not what they did. Instead, they shared everything. When one found food, he shared it with the other. When one was cold, the other gave him warmth. When one was too tired to walk, the other helped him stand. They survived together, not because it was logical, because it was human. Paused, her eyes were bright with emotion. That boy became my grandfather's best friend for the rest of his life. They never forgot what they did for each other on that terrible journey. And when my grandfather finally reached safety, do you know what he did? He spent the next 3 years helping other refugees. He gave them food. He found them shelter. He helped them search for their lost families. Not because anyone told him to, not because he would get anything in return. Because he remembered what it felt like to be alone and afraid and hopeless. He did not want anyone else to feel that way. Nodded. That is the thing about humans. Yes, we can be monsters. We have done terrible things to each other throughout history, things I am ashamed of, things that make me wonder if we deserve to exist at all. He looked directly at Professor. But we also run into burning buildings to save strangers. We share our last piece of bread with people we have never met. We have sent astronauts into space knowing they might not come back just because we wanted to see what was out there. We have dedicated our lives to curing diseases that do not even affect us personally. We are the species that invented war, added. But we are also the species that invented the concept of war crimes, rules that say there are things you cannot do even to your enemies. We created the very idea that there are limits to violence, that some things are wrong no matter what. Professor was silent for a long time. Her gases had stopped swirling. They were completely still, which meant she was thinking very deeply. Every other species in the galaxy, she finally said, that evolved on became either extinct or purely predatory. They survived by destroying all competition. They became nothing but killers, but humans. Humans survived by working together, finished. We are the scariest things on our planet, we know that. We have always known that. Our oldest stories are about heroes who fight monsters, but also about the monsters inside ourselves. We tell these stories because we want to be better than our worst impulses. Sometimes we fail. A lot of times, honestly, but we keep trying. We always keep trying. Pressed her crystal hand against the inside of the dome. Is that why you welcomed us, even knowing we were afraid of you, even knowing what we thought of your species? Smiled at her, and for the first time, nobody flinched at the sight of human teeth. We have been alone in the universe for a very long time, he said. We looked up at the stars for thousands of years and wondered if anyone else was out there. When we finally found out there were other intelligent species, other civilizations, other people. Yes, some humans were scared. Some wanted to build weapons and prepare for war. That is in our nature too, he shrugged. But most of us just wanted to say hello. We wanted to share what we have learned. We wanted to finally have neighbors. Laugh softly. My mother always said you can judge a person by how they treat someone who cannot do anything for them. I think that applies to species too. You came here afraid of us. You had no weapons, no power, nothing to offer us except your curiosity, and we welcomed you anyway, because that is also what humans do. The transport ship arrived an hour later to take the students back to the academy. As they walked toward it, stopped at the edge of the dome. She looked back at Earth one last time, at the blue oceans and green forests, at the dangerous, beautiful, terrifying world below. And were waving goodbye. Two humans standing under their deadly sun, breathing their corrosive air, living on their violent planet, and smiling. Professor said quietly, I think I understand now why they call it a killing world. Because of the violence, the wars, the history of death. No, his crystal body caught the light of Earth's sun and scattered it into 1,000 tiny rainbows. Because everything on that planet should have killed them. Their sun, their weather, their predators, their diseases, their own nature. And they killed it all back. They fought their world and they fought themselves and they refused to die. But instead of becoming monsters, they became protectors, Professor finished softly. They became humans. The transport ship lifted off and rose through Earth's atmosphere. The students watched through the windows as the killing world grew smaller below them, that blue and green marble hanging in the blackness of space, home to the most dangerous species in the known galaxy. And also, perhaps, the most remarkable. Pressed her hand against the window. Goodbye, she whispered. Thank you for showing us who you really are. Far below, on a planet where everything wanted to kill everything else, two humans watched the ship disappear into the sky. Then they turned and walked back toward the city. There was work to do, people to help, lives to live. Just another day on Earth. Just another day of being human.